if you are engaging in this work from a place of trauma, you are going to traumatize other people. I was sad and I was also incredibly angry. And I felt like I would be a hypocrite if I just kept going, doing my work without taking serious time away to heal. Psychedelic healing is not as easy as giving people a pill.
Yeah.
But compared to what we need to do in the Middle East, it like kind of is.
This podcast discusses psychedelic-assisted therapy, which involves the use of substances that are illegal in many countries. We prioritize safety and do not encourage illegal drug use. Psychedelic therapy should only be conducted in controlled legal settings under professional supervision. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before considering any form of treatment. Welcome to the New Health Club show, Hadas Alterman.
Thank you.
First time in real life,
Yeah.
Because last time we were doing this in the famous Zoom pandemic. So a lot of things have happened in the meantime. You were a lawyer at Plant Medicine Law Group back then, one of the first really big firms in the space about psychedelic lawyers, if you want. So tell me what happened in the last kind of year and where are you now?
Okay. So what hasn't happened
Yeah, exactly.
in the last year? Okay. So Plant Medicine Law Group got sold and folded into Emerge, which is a law firm in Oregon that's now spread to a couple of other states. And they're also in the psychedelic space and really lovely. Adriana, my co-founder, and I, who we love, we each ended up going post October 7th to do work in the pro-Israel anti-Semitism space. From there, and we're both still doing that work. And from there, we decided to come back to working together. She formed the Jewish Healing Society, of which I'm now outside counsel, and we can chat all about that. But what I'm mostly spending my time doing at this point is I'm head of the psychedelics practice group at Ritter Spencer Chang, which is a healthcare law firm in Texas. Mm-hmm. And I'm also the director of legislative policy for an organization called Stand With Us. And that's where I'm doing my pro-Israel advocacy work in DC.
So obviously this is the main topic that is affecting everybody now. It's no longer over here.
Yeah.
So, and we had this conversation a couple of times this week. So how does your work look like in this context? What is it that you're doing there?
So many things. For a lot of people, I think that a lot of people working in this space, it's just putting out fires. And it's like, do you guys have the game, the Whack-A-Mole, the arcade game?
No.
So there's this game where it's like a kid's game where there's 4 different little tunnels and plastic moles keep popping out, and you hit one and then another one pops out and you have to hit one and another one pops out.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. So it's basically like incident after incident after incident of there being some horrific anti-Semitism lesson plan in a 3rd grade classroom, or a boycott, divest, sanction resolution that they're trying to pass through City Hall. So you deal with one and then another one pops up, you deal with another and then another one pops up. And that work's important, but it's not what I want to do. And I think that we need people fighting the short-term battles, but we also need people thinking about how do we move the needle in the long run. And that is less obvious because it's inherently slower change, and it's harder to get people on board with like a paradigm shift than it is with, hey, let's all show up to a city council meeting and advocate against sanctioning Israel. But that's what I am interested in. And separate and aside from psychedelics, my big issue right now is defining anti-Semitism so that it can be properly identified and addressed and fought and penalized when appropriate. in a way that doesn't infringe on the First Amendment. So there's a lot of debate around that right now, and it's not so clear anymore where hate speech ends and incitement begins, incitement to violence, right? So the First Amendment protects speech. It protects political speech, offensive speech, speech that people are incredibly triggered by, but it stops short at protecting incitement to violence. And now what we're seeing is, and we just saw the mayoral candidate in New York say globalize the Intifada and then say, this isn't actually a call to violence. And therefore, if you're going by that, if you're going by sort of the conventional wisdom that it's not, it wouldn't be, it's still protected by the First Amendment. And what we've seen over and over again, because meaning of language, it changes with use, is that actually that is a proxy for a call to violence. So how do we as Jewish organizations work with the First Amendment groups like Foundation for Individual Rights and Education to figure out okay, let's meet in the middle, because everything's changed and the old ways don't work anymore. And then the other thing that I'm really interested in, and this is more psychedelic focused, is through the Jewish Healing Society, Adriana and I are working with the Israeli Economic Mission to bridge biotech sectors from the United States and Israel. And what was really interesting for me when I first started doing this, my immediate assumption was the Israeli founders are going to need Israeli founders will need American money, because I also, in thinking about how, with the political dynamics of the Israeli government looking for, funding from Congress, I had this assumption that it would work the same way, when in fact, Israeli founders, the good ones who are in, the elite intelligence units where they make all these connections and they're doing R&D, with the resources of the Israeli army, both, capital and human capital. They finished the army, they found their companies, and they're super well connected, and it makes more sense to work with the Israeli investors. And the American investors are actually the ones that cannot get in, they can't get in on the ground. They can't actually find the right founders or get those meetings or invest early enough for it to be worth it. And so we are interested in finding Israeli founders that could benefit from the human capital that American investors can bring, and the capital. But really finding them the best researchers and the right connections in government, the people who understand the regulatory environment here. And the way that relates back politically is, I think that the Israeli government's diplomacy is an abject failure. I think that's it's evident,
Yeah, sure.
And I think that our tech sector is incredible, and it has global appeal. It speaks for itself. These people are incredibly well spoken and educated, and so I think that if we can get these founders, the more plugged in and the more platformed we can get them, the better diplomats and delegates Israel will have.
So, let's quickly come back to the moment of October 7th, which made you also change your, let's call it career at one point, but also maybe see that your vision as a lawyer was kind of sharpened suddenly. So, in what way do you think, or is that what happened? Did psychedelics actually personally help you to see okay, this has happened now. This is why I have to go? Because you also could have stayed, a classic psychedelic lawyer. It would have been also a career that, is important. But you kind of, and I remember we had this one quick conversation. Something in you might have made you choose a different path. Did psychedelics have anything to do with this? In your own journey, did you do a journey around this, or did you ask yourself that question in a journey maybe?
I think when I look back on it now, I do think it was in part just a trauma response. I think
Wasn't.
it was.
Yeah.
I think
was.
it really was.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was so inundated with anger and pain and fear that that work and those conversations became really consuming, and it was taking up all of my time and my mental energy. And I really was just I was productive, but also spiraling. One of the things that we talk about all the time at the firm with our clients and on podcasts and in the practitioner world, something that comes up a lot is if you are engaging in this work from a place of trauma, you are going to traumatize other people.
This is very interesting what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's like everyone talks about that with respect to practitioners working with medicine and patients, but I think that it's true on any level. And I was just in such a I was sad, and I was also incredibly angry. And I felt like I would be a hypocrite if I just kept doing my work without taking serious time away to heal. And I did. I basically took a year away from the space, to the extent that I can ever really get away from this space, because it's so much of my life. I backed off completely because I didn't feel like I could do good work from that place,
So you're saying October 7th happened, you start to feel traumatized also as a Jewish person, and you pull back a year because you realize if you would act in this time, or let's say in this year, you would make decisions that are trauma-based, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very interesting thinking because you think sometimes it would be the other way around, that you now especially I'm going to move forward with things.
Yeah.
So, and okay, so but did you, the interesting question for me is, did you realize that while you were doing it, or was it something that you realized after?
I think I realized it on a fundamental level. Almost at first I was just in a blind rage.
Mm-hmm.
I had a ketamine session scheduled for October 10th. And I didn't know whether or not to cancel it. And ultimately I decided not to. And it was so crazy. I tried to go into, I would not recommend this. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, but I tried to go into the mind of the terrorists to see if I could feel an any ounce of compassion or humanity towards them, because this was only 3 days in and I already was fully off the deep end. I was already just turn the whole thing into a parking lot. I was so angry. I was just I was out of my mind with anger and pain. And so, and all I could feel was just full body, just shards of glass, nothing. In trying to feel them, I just couldn't feel anything. It was just pure chaos. And I had a few more experiences like that, where it was just really clear to me that I wasn't yet in a place to access compassion for the other side. And I felt like it was important to be honest about that with myself. And so with that, I was I know that that's where I'm at. I'm not there yet. Mm-hmm. And I have close friends in the space who have really different opinions about this stuff from me politically, who I agree with on everything else and have worked with on so many things. And we also have had one person in particular who's a very dear friend kind of had to do a detente, of we're just not going to talk about this because we can't get to a sincere place of seeing the other side. And that's really scary. Like, that's really scary to be like, with all of my, knowledge and like resources around healing and grief and compassion, like it still feels fake. Like it just still it was fake and forced and like, like really, really consumed by unending grief and anger. And so it was like pretty apparent to me early on, like this is going to spill over. But it wasn't until I fully backed off from everything that I realized the extent to which I was like completely consumed.
So meaning that, let's say in the beginning, psychedelics helped you to first understand that you couldn't kind of, let's say, do some maybe even good work, with that kind of mindset, which is a very interesting thought suddenly or like very interesting version to look at, because mainly the narrative is like something bad happens and then people almost sometimes use the trauma to create energy to go against it or to say like, well, now I'm even more convinced that this is the thing I need to fight or something. So meaning that because you, let's say, pulled back for a year and you saw in this ketamine thing that I cannot connect, which to be frank, I also don't think this would be possible in the beginning when you saw all the hostages there, like not being released and everything. So I think it was a very difficult situation anyway, being Jewish or not Jewish, to understand, okay, why are they still there? What did they actually do to people, kind of? And but so meaning then after this year of staying away from let's say the industry also, so you kind of created a new mindset also, basically, if you want to now start to do work that is very relevant for people to understand how also anti-Semitism works, kind of, because me being also in Germany, I mean, I think that people have no idea how anti-Semitic the vibe, let's say, is right now.
Yeah.
But also because there is not really an understanding of what this actually means, like in 2025.
Yeah.
And not like in 1933 or something.
Yeah.
So, and how would you say is this, how did this new mindset of yours come together to now go into an organization like Stand With Us, but also the other work you're doing to maybe create like like almost like a healthy way of working in this context?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out
good.
how to make it healthy.
No, of course. Yeah.
But
I mean, healthy is a strong word.
Yeah. But being able to hold multiple truths at once and allowing things to be very messy. Like just everything in my life it was quite simple before October 7th. It was like, I understand that psychedelics are not the end all be all. They're not a panacea. They're not a silver bullet, of course. But it's like, this is my work and this is what I do. And I feel fairly comfortable and confident that like, this is a good use of my time. And I still feel that way. But now, that's what I would have wanted. I would have loved to never work for a Jewish organization, to not really engage in this stuff. Like, I'm Israeli. My family's in Israel. A lot of my whole family still lives there for the most part. And that feels like that is a satisfying relationship for me to have with Judaism and Israel, is just being that and enjoying that. And I don't want to have to do this work. I just feel like I have to do this work. And with psychedelics, now it's like, I do this because I love it and it makes me happy. And I think that this is a really hopeful, beautiful thing that not only has promise for the future, but already brings people together. And with all of its dysfunction and stopping and starting, and all the things we need to work on and fix, it's, I think, easily a net positive. There's so much more good that comes out of this than bad. And I think that all of the problems are things that we will solve, and we will solve them sooner than we think. And we understand, like, intellectually all of the problems and all of the solutions. And there's pretty broad consensus on someone needs to, work with CMS and figure out insurance. Okay. Like, not easy, but ultimately not that hard. Yeah. And then there's the Middle East, which is like, it's like, you talk about intractable diseases, like that's the intractable disease, like extremism and radicalization and people living in like, a 13th century mindset in extreme poverty under the like iron fist of the regime in Iran. Like, that's an intractable disease that we need a solution to. And like, you can't invent that in a lab, and you can't, psychedelic healing is not as easy as giving people a pill. Yeah. But compared to what we need to do in the Middle East, it like kind of is,
But I find it also interesting that, like roughly a year ago, when this whole movement in Iran started, like making clear like how women get treated and killed, and men who were speaking out for these women were also killed. So, and there was a huge kind of, whoa, this can't be. And this now is also a little bit sadly no longer on Instagram, you could say. So it's a very strange dynamic that we are experiencing now in many ways. And in the cultural world, I mean, I see it in Berlin too. It's a very different understanding about anti-Semitism than, let's say, in a political world, than in, for example, in festivals like Berlinale. It's a very strange system of communicating the conflict from a stage. So it's kind of a very kind of weird, I think we can agree on that, like situation right now. How to even talk about this at all, kind of. So, but in what way do you think, or what are the ingredients coming from you as a lawyer, which is already a little bit of a more distant perspective than being an activist, for example? You can also be an activist lawyer, but I mean, it's not that easy though. So coming from a lawyer perspective, what are elements that are anti-inflammatory in this current situation?
I love that question. Okay, so well, I'll start with this. My family is originally from what is now Iran. They're from a city called Mashhad. And in the 17th century got expelled by there was, historically Persian, were ethnically Persian. They got expelled and moved to Afghanistan, and then from Afghanistan went to Israel. And so I have like deep indigenous roots, if you want to use that word, in the Middle East. Okay. Wow. So I feel very confident talking about this stuff. Like I don't walk on eggshells because I'm from there, and like my family's experienced colonization there. And so I don't think I'm as, I think, like people can say whatever they want to say about how I'm approaching the problem, but I'm like very confident in my right to speak on it the way that I do. My first anti-inflammation tool is just like saying the truth. Just saying the truth, even if it's hard, even if people aren't going to like it, and understanding that not everyone will receive it, and my message isn't going to land with everyone, but it'll land with certain people. And I don't need to have alliances with everyone. I need to have alliances with the people out there who are ready to hear the message that I'm bringing, and vice versa. Really like a concrete example of that, I was just talking to these guys, Ideas Beyond Borders, which is a nonprofit that focuses on, it's a media platform, and they put out de-radicalization content in the Middle East, and they have They've had a billion impressions over the past couple of years.
Wow,
They've
okay.
translated hundreds of texts, like Western texts, into Arabic, and they do very, very thorough sentiment tracking. And the founder, they're both, I think the founder is Egyptian, and they're one of the other leadership positions there is filled by this guy from Iraq who's Kurdish. And so like they also, I think, have the authority to speak on this stuff in a way that is pretty unimpeachable, because it's like it's their people, And one of the sentiments that one of the really effective narratives that they put out there, because they'll put out content and see how people respond. And they put out a piece, a while back. This was like an example that was shared with me about a Jewish doctor in Egypt, like an Egyptian Jew, who, they put out some piece about him saving people's lives in his medical practice, like something incredibly non-earth shattering. And through their sentiment tracking, they saw that the comments were so positive, but they were things like, "I've never heard of a good Jew." Like I've never heard of a good Jew.
Wow.
And then some of them, were, some of them were negative, of course. But the overwhelming majority was like people were actually willing to have their minds changed when the message was brought to them in a way that they could hear by people they were willing to hear it from. And part of why this platform needs to exist is because it's set up to counter Al Jazeera, which is Qatari-funded state media. It's like all propaganda. It's a lot of what people here in the States are ingesting. And it is like pro-radicalization, pro-desecularization. I think that the more we empower each other to just speak the truth on this incredibly uncomfortable issue, and like the more we're okay just saying, like, there's not all ideologies are good. Like there's just ideological strands that are evil throughout history. And that's not saying like there are, we have to condemn everyone that ascribes to a certain religion, because that's like obviously dumb. But yeah, if you believe that you should kill all the Jews and that America is the devil and you're going to act on that, it's like we have to just be in a place societally where it's like okay to say no, no, and I don't really care who that offends.
So, but I mean, again, like you coming in now as a lawyer and kind of basically, let's say an organization or even, I mean, eventually a country would tell you, that's so and so is offending us. Like, what are the options to legally prosecute us? I think most people have no idea, like, that there might be avenues to, use the law. To stop certain developments or to stop certain organizations or maybe even media companies putting out wrong messages. I mean, a simple example is, for example, it's nothing to do with a topic, but so, for example, Daily Mail had I think it was in the early 2000s, meaning Rupert Murdoch, they had these I don't know how they did it, but they were hacking mobile accounts from celebrities and then just putting them on Daily Mail. So, and obviously this is something that was kind of such a moment to go really too far. So of course they had lawyers saying, well, this is not sorry, even if you're a celebrity, your phone is still off the table. So in our case, what we're talking about now, so there must be situations where, let's say, an organization or a country could say, I'm sorry, this is not tolerable. We're going to sue you for saying, let's say, Jews are so and so, and whatever, like putting out inflammation stories. So do you have an example where what you could talk to how this could play out, for example?
It's so tricky. It's like, this is the $1 million question because, anything that has to do with speech cuts both ways. And so if I want to sit here and say, I think that radical Islam is a an ideology that's driving half of the world to the brink of, disaster. I think is like not hyperbole. I need to be okay with people saying the same thing about Israel. I need to be okay with people saying the same thing about Jews or like Orthodox Judaism. Like, it's just, you can't have it both ways with speech. And so, and part of why I feel confident in saying what I say is I know that I accept any other side coming in and saying what they think is true. And I don't have to agree with it. But I think everyone, at least in this country under the Constitution, like, that's what it is. There are also limits. So like, if I were to say, God forbid, and I would never say this, radical Islam is crazy. So everyone listening to this podcast, go out and do X, violent act to Y group of people. That's incitement to violence. And that is, that's where the law should step in and say, you can't say this. Like, we're not going to protect your right to say this. You don't have a right to call for violence against an individual or against a group. And that line is really tricky right now. And the example I'll give is, I think it was June 1st in Boulder, Colorado. There was a peaceful march in support of, releasing the hostages. Yeah. And some guy came up and threw Molotov cocktails onto a group of people. I think like 11 people got burned. One of them was an 80-year-old Holocaust survivor, like severe burns all over her body. And as he was throwing, he said, I think he said something about like, fascist, end Zionism and free Palestine. And so that's where it just gets really hard because so those words have now been used in connection to incitement to violence all over the world more than once. And so the argument that is simply not incitement, it doesn't hold. It's like, no, people are galvanizing around this larger project of killing Jews. Like we saw the same thing in DC. The shooter in DC said free Palestine and then shot 2 people at the embassy. And these events were like 11 days apart. And so it's not a defensible argument if you're talking about what's true and not true, that those words are divorced from violence anymore. However, I think it remains to be seen, like what is the line, and like what do we do with that if we have a free Palestine sign at a rally? Do those people all get arrested? Like, how do we treat that? And I don't think we actually know. And I think that gets back to the messiness. I recently I gave written testimony to a board of supervisors. I submitted to a board of supervisors meeting to be written into the record in Loudoun County, Virginia, where every single meeting they've got like hordes of people coming in and saying really insane, like, Zionist thugs are murdering indiscriminately and genocide and Israel, apartheid, and like libel, like really like blood libel things, like Jews are vampires of children. Sure. And so what I said to the board of supervisors was, I'm not going to tell you how. I don't know what the line is here. Like I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with your county, and I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. But as an attorney, I'm going to say you're on notice. You're on notice that these words have been used in a violent context enough times that it is reasonable to assume that that same violence could happen right here, because you're 40 miles from DC, where it did happen. It just did happen in this exact same way. So know that if it happens here, you can't claim, you could really be criminally liable, because you allowed in this very chamber people to repeat the same exact rhetoric that's part of a broader project that has led to violence globally over and over and over again. And it's verbatim all the same stuff. So I don't think at this moment it's going to work to say, tell these people to stop saying this thing.
Yeah.
Because it never works.
Yeah.
It just never works.
That's
and
true.
So I guess the last thing I'll say on that is the best antidote to bad speech is better speech. Like, what are the better ideas? And that's why I love the Abraham Accords. That's why I love Ideas Beyond Borders. That's why I'm so committed to, this psychedelic space and this work, is because we don't actually have to sit around having a food fight about like Muslims versus Jews. Like, that's not a productive conversation for society. And we can put forth like more interesting ideas. We can't ignore the bad that's happening, but we can do both. And we are not, one of the things that like the medicine has given me, has put into my consciousness, and that I've integrated into my work, is I don't owe this conflict 100% of my attention. And I don't owe it like any percentage of sadness or any volume of sadness.
But do you feel that, let's say we agree that free speech is messy. It's not going to be, whatever kind of free speech it is, it's not going to be clear or just, it's going to be messy. So does your psychedelic practice allow you to take the messiness better that comes with it? Mm-hmm. There's less rigidity around it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've also now gotten to a place, and psychedelics have really helped me with this. Like, I'm definitely no longer in the place I was post October 7th, where like I couldn't hold any emotional complexity. I now really can. And I still don't know what to do with it. Like, I now have the full breadth of feeling of compassion for all sides, not for like Hamas or Hezbollah or, the leadership of,
no, of course not.
But like for everyone that's not contributing to the problem. The thing that's changed isn't my depth of compassion. Like, that was always there. I think that what psychedelics helped me with was the emotional maturity to hold all of it and to recognize like, this is so much bigger than me. I don't have to have a solution to recognize the complexity and to like allow in the feelings that come with the complexity of this problem. And like, I don't have to know what to say to my friends that are on such an opposite side of the spectrum, but I still love, to like still love them. And a lot of people disagree with me. A lot of people want you to take a side 110%. And I just can't. Like, I believe what I believe, and I think I have like pretty clearly defined views. But I don't want to fall into like an ideological camp, I think that's super anti-psychedelic.
That's a great last comment. Super anti-psychedelic. Thank you so much. This was not so much about psychedelics, but maybe what they did to us in the meantime.
Yeah.
And I think these conversations should be way more often, kind of like to really not fall into these categories that media also present to you. This is what you should think. And so it's thank you for being so open about this. Also, how personally you were affected by this.
Thank you. Thank you for like being the best, easiest person to talk to about this stuff.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for listening to this episode, and thank you for listening to the show. If you want to know more about how we fast-track psychedelic destigmatization, please head over to the New Health Club podcast on Apple or Spotify. There are many episodes talking about several substances, several treatments, several ways how psychedelics can be used these days. You also find us on Instagram under the New Health Club. But if you want to know more about our nonprofit foundation, the New Health Institute, please head over to www.thenewhealthinstitute.org. Of course, we are here on Instagram too, under the New Health Institute. Very important to me is also that you subscribe to our newsletter on Substack. Please look for thenewhealthclub.substack.com. This is very important to me because we really start to build right now a media platform on Substack around psychedelics and new health topics. And of course, we would love your support on this and love if you subscribe. Love if you tell other people, your friends, your family, your community, so we can really kick off this endeavor and actually have another place, another platform next to the podcast where we can get you information and education around psychedelics.